Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope the sun is shining, the birds are singing, the wind is at your back. We have with us today an incredible guest, Spencer Hawkswell. He's the president and CEO of TheraPsil. For those who may not know, TheraPsil is a nonprofit and training organization advocating for legal access to psilocybin for those in medical need. Additionally, they are home to Canada's leading psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy training program. Spencer, there's a lot more I could say about you, but I think the most people in this space know who you are. And if I left anything out in the introduction, please feel free to let me know about it. I want to get into all the things you're doing. But before I do that, I just wanted to say hello and ask you how you're doing today.
Oh, I'm doing really, really well. I'm calling in from Toronto. I normally live on the West Coast in Vancouver, but I'm home visiting some friends and family this weekend. I, yeah, I couldn't be better. I'm doing great, thank you.
Nice, absolutely. Prior to us starting this conversation, we had talked a little bit about your trip to India out there a little bit, and you have this amazing picture of you on this motorcycle in the mountains out there. And it seems that so many people that have been in this space, or so many people that have actually made the pilgrimage or been lucky enough to go to the Far East to kind of figure out a little bit about themselves and about the space. It seems like that trip was pretty amazing for you. I was wondering if you could tell people, I think that'd be a little bit of a background people could learn about you. Can you tell people about like what that trip was about and maybe what you learned over there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it was about an expansion of my perception of the
Mhm.
world, right? Like traveling certainly is something that not everyone gets to do. It's a real privilege. Um, but the traveling I did, it was pretty on the cheap. I mean, that's somewhere almost anyone can go. I did a lot of Southeast Asia, and I absolutely love theology and divinity and world religions. So I needed to go check out India. The really just the birthplace of so much rich culture and history. So I wanted to go there, and sure enough, got a really enriched view of of a completely different world that I think everybody, they don't have to go to India, they can go anywhere, but everybody should get out of their country when they're young, and in order to have a real understanding of how the world works, because it completely changed my view on so many things. I would say in Canada, North America, here in the US, we really live in a bubble. We think that everybody thinks one way, and that's how it works. And the second you head somewhere else, you realize that not only is there a whole different world of religious belief and cultural belief, uh, but that they're interconnected. The world that we live in, they've got a completely separate view of world events and how we view ourselves. It was the best thing I ever did. It was the best thing I ever did. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. There's a great book I was just reading. It's called Storming Heaven. If anybody ever is looking for a good book, this book right here is called Storming Heaven. It's by Jay Stevens, and it's just about the 60s, and it talks quite a bit about this integration of the East and the West and theology and divinity. And I'm wondering, after going over to India and coming back to America, the Americas, you know, was there like this bridge that you crossed where you began seeing the world in a more holistic view? Because it seems that that's sometimes what happens, is like all of a sudden you're introduced to all these new ideas, and then you come back to this place where you used to live, and you're able to incorporate and maybe see things from a different perspective. Is that something that you encountered?
Absolutely. And it gave me a whole new appreciation for my own life and upbringing and my own heritage and culture. I had always been interested in, Alan Watts, right?
Yeah.
And Carl Jung and all these people who had done, a significant amount of traveling and looking into psychology. I think it's Alan Watts, Psychology East and West, or Psychotherapy East
Yeah.
and West, and yin and yang, right? To Dharma, karma, like all these different uh, you know, old philosophies that actually made me have a whole new respect for Christianity, which I was
Yeah.
born and raised Christian. I went to a Catholic school, and yeah, all of these things that were right under my nose, all of these belief systems that we have that hugely impact the world I live in. I had lived in Toronto for a long time, and I'm now in Vancouver. These are like, it's pretty much like everybody in Vancouver is from every single part of the world, right? It's so multicultural. So yeah, you go to these places and you go, I get it. I understand why there are so many Sikhs living here, and why there's such a rich Chinese community here, and I understand how they better, not fully, but better how they operate. So yeah, absolutely. It made me also then realize that how I had been raised is just as important and special and amazing. Um, yeah, increases conscientiousness and all, I would say.
Yeah, that's so well put. It reminds me of like a rite of passage or a ceremony or a ritual for someone to leave everything you know. And you could see it in like different scriptures, like the prodigal son, or you hear just different types of, if you read Siddhartha, the same thing happens in there. And you see this leaving everything you know so that you could become the person you're supposed to be, and then a return back to implement some of those ideas. And so after you come back, how do you transition from this person who has gone out and made all these self-discoveries, and then all of a sudden now you're the CEO of TheraPsil, which is in a really big fight to help legalize or get people in Canada the right to medicinal psilocybin. But how do you go from one person to this next person? Was there a vision? Was there a path that you followed? Was there something that inspired you, or what was that road like?
Yeah, I was inspired by every single story that I have read growing up, right? I mean, I'm a kid of the 90s, so I think of, The Legend of Zelda, right? Which
Yeah.
is like Nintendo 64 Legend of Zelda, right? Like I would lie. I'd be lying if I said that those stories, which again come from rich mythological stories, far beyond anything Nintendo ever made up, right? These are all like age-old archetypes of the hero going off and heading to different distant lands, to discover what the world is, and in the same way themselves too. It's the hero journey, which will
Yep.
likely bring us back to. We'll probably talk about that later on, right? Because that's
Absolutely.
something that people refer to in psychedelics all the time, is this hero's journey. And as far as I see it, like the goal really should be, I think, to explore the unknown, and to overcome it, and all the fear and anxiety that comes along with new places, and doing new things, right? Fundamentally, that's what humans do, right? We take chaos and we turn it into order. That is the hero's journey. That's their story. So the parallels, yeah, are amazing, and I think that's the basis for a lot of at least my travels in time. So coming back from that, what do you see in every single one of those instances is the best thing that you can come back to do is take a bit of responsibility, and that's what I wanted to do is come back to Canada. I saw, or in my time traveling, I experimented with a lot of psychedelics. There was a lot of publicity around Michael Pollan's book, and a lot of the research that was being done. And I'd been working in sales prior, and finance at RBC and TD, and I just thought, I don't want to go back to that. I want to come back and do something really important. And it was just the right time. So often, what people ascribe to luck is really just skill and opportunity, and that was my opportune moment to work in this field. And so when I came back, I thought, how do I do this? My mother was hugely supportive as a palliative care nurse, and upon a couple days of research, I found Bruce Tobin, really the founder of TheraPsil, and kind of the rest is history. But let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's amazing to me to bring up the idea of the hero's journey in psychedelics, because it's this moment where those myths have been ingrained in us since Platonic times, that these are things that we hearken back to. Or if you read Terence McKenna, you read the stories of the archaic revival, this idea of going back to a time where we kind of had direction, where we knew where we were going. And sometimes you have to go back and face the threshold guardian, Joseph Campbell would say, in order to make it to the next level. And so I love to hear that. And I'm curious. So you meet Bruce, and then all of a sudden you just meet him, and you're like, hey, I want to see what you're doing with there. So I'm interested in this. Or do you tell him your story or your vision, or how does it proceed from there?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, Bruce Tobin had a group of 4 or 5 other clinicians in Victoria, so Vancouver Island, and they were asking for permission from the Canadian government to essentially redo the Hopkins experiment, but less in the context of the experiment, more just medical access. Because if 80% of patients are seeing, clinically significant decreases in anxiety, depression, in wherever the studies are being done, why not Canadians? And here's the kicker: why not Canadians who recently, at that time, 2017, had been given the right to die with medical assistance in dying, which we call MAID in Canada. And so, this is where he really ran into this, let's just call it constitutional, or we have a charter in Canada, logical inconsistency, where the government says, you have liberty over your body, and the right to safety and security of your persons to essentially, like, so much freedom and liberty, you could actually end your own life. But don't you dare try a mushroom, which in these clinical studies has been proven to be very effective. So Bruce thought, I'm going to ask, and then if that doesn't work, we're going to sue the government. And so I had messaged Bruce, and I essentially said, man, I love what you're doing. Any chance I could come work for free for you and just get into the world? Then he just sent me a message back saying, Spencer, nice to hear from you or meet you. I'm heading to Mexico in 7 days. I head there for the winter. If you want to meet me before then, come do that. And so I literally hopped in my parents' car and drove out west the next day. And that's how we met. And I guess from there we just hit it off, really hit it off. And I started working for him, raising money, but almost instantaneously I met a couple people who had been working with cannabis, and it became very clear that we had to change the tactic a little bit, that we could go the legal route, or we could change the request from a doctor asking for access, and instead focus on patients and see if we can get the Canadian public behind us to support us. And so that's when Bruce and I, working on the challenge, trying to raise money, we met Thomas Hartle and Laurie Brooks, and those were two patients who eventually we went public with, to the public, and said, look at these two Canadians have the right to die, but don't have the right to try psilocybin. And we requested that exemption again from the minister, and the minister at the time actually granted it. And that really was the first time that I would say we gained any real publicity. We got the first legal exemptions for psilocybin in Canada since it was made illegal, 50 years ago.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
No,
I'll leave it there. I'll let you ask you. Yeah. You gotta watch me. I'll keep on talking forever if you let me. So
no, it's all good. I'm curious to hear all about it. It seems like a huge win. I love the idea of switching tactics. It's almost like you're harnessing the wind from another angle when you switch from the doctor to the patient. Maybe you could. What was it that caused you to have that change in strategy?
It was a person, honestly. It was one of the people who had worked in government and done it before, back in the early 2000s for cannabis, and said, hey, just so you know, politicians don't give a shit about doctors and therapists and nurses, at least not as this, obscure kind of class of healthcare professionals, right? They care about individuals. They really do. And the Canadian public does too. And they really care about patients, right? Whose rights are being violated. And so that was just like, well, duh, right? Dr. Bruce Tobin's asking for this access. We're going to sue the government. It's like, that's like a back of the, that's like you send that to the back of the table, backwater government, kind of like, somebody deal with this. But when we bring Thomas Hartle and Laurie Brooks forward, two people who are suffering and are now trying to decide, well, do I end my life with medical assistance in dying, or do I access psilocybin? Let's let the Minister of Health figure that one out. And now the Minister of Health is going, uh-oh, right? In a way, it's like the blood is on my hands, right, if I don't respond here. And luckily, we had a incredibly compassionate health minister. Her name is Patty Haiju. She's now moved away from the being a Minister of Health to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. And we've got two new health ministers. To go back, those two exemptions approved, we went on to get another 50 exemptions approved, as well as many for healthcare professionals too. So once the patients got the access, it was like, okay, well, how are patients going to access psilocybin assisted psychotherapy if we don't have trained therapists? Now, obviously, those therapists could just train illegally, but we wanted to make a point of, no, this should be legal. And so we requested access for those therapists and doctors to use psilocybin in the context of training, and we got the approval. And that's the launch of our training program. So now, we're in this point of 2020 or 2021 where we've got patients accessing psilocybin, seeing amazing progress in their mental state, right? Like going from absolute depression, demoralization, hopelessness, struggling with even getting through chemotherapy and waking up each day, to like becoming these vicious advocates who are doing so well and are happy, are full of hope, and so much better after their single psilocybin journey. Things are going so well. And then Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, got reelected and changed his cabinet over, and we got a new health minister, actually two new health ministers. They replaced Patty Hadju with both Jean-Yves Duclos and Caroline Bennett. And the second they got into power, they shut the whole program down. And that's brought us pretty much to this date where they made a small amendment to allow access through this thing called the Special Access Program. But like its name suggests, it's very special. It's, not everyone gets access. And so we're now at the point where a charter challenge, right, going back to the original strategy, is really the only option we've got. And so we've pushed that forward incredibly hard. The reason for changing tactics is just you have to, right? You have to be willing to explore new ways, right? And just like you said, the Campbell, what you call it, the Guardian, the Guardian. It's like right when you think things are going well and you've got a strategy, the whole world conspires, to essentially say, well, too bad, right? Now you got a new problem, right? You got to overcome that. So it really is this continuous journey of how to fight active political campaign that wants to do everything it possibly can to stop people from accessing psilocybin. And that's what's really become clear is, I don't know whose agenda it is, but it seems like everybody within the government is doing everything they possibly can to stop legal access to psilocybin. Meanwhile, it's never been easier to get it unregulated and access. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just speculation on my part, and I don't know, but it seems to me that a lot of politicians, at least in the US, are get donations from like Pfizer or Big Pharma or something like that. And it would make sense that these large corporations that have, help create the curriculum in different medical schools or have different contracts with different hospitals, it would seem that they would have a lot of money to lose if, in fact, you could have this type of psilocybin treatment, this mushroom that grows in the ground for free versus this long, extensive, lifetime subscription to drugs, at least till the end of your life. It seems like there could be some of that going on in the Canadian government. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, without a doubt, right? Like, this is a personal qualm I have with the way that our government works with pharmaceutical companies right now. Is pharmaceutical companies do amazing work sometimes, right? They bring drugs to market that are like incredible. I think the best thing though is when individual researchers find these things. Like I forget his name right now. He's from Toronto, or it happened in the University of Toronto. But, this is where we discovered insulin for diabetes, and that was not, there was no patent put on that, right? That the right thing to do was like, I just found this miracle drug. Let's share it with the world. Let's not patent it. So, at the end of the day, if there's this radical, treatment option for depression and hopelessness, anxiety, who's at jeopardy? And the answer is shareholders of pharmaceutical companies and the pharmaceutical companies themselves. What's it worth to them? The answer is probably like $1 trillion over the next couple of years. So when you really think about like, what are we up against? We're up against people who expect to make about $1 trillion from the SSRIs and different antidepressants, that should psilocybin be as effective as it looks within these clinical trials, will outcompete those pharmaceutical companies. So you almost got to turn it around and be like, well, what would you do if $1 billion or $1 trillion was on the line? And the answer is almost anything, because these companies, their goal as a for-profit company, their legal obligation is to get as many drugs into people as possible, right, to maximize shareholder value. And so I absolutely think we're being counter-lobbied by pharmaceutical companies. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to see psilocybin get through, and if they do, hopefully it's their psilocybin, right?
Right.
There's a patented molecule. So yeah, that's pretty distressing sometimes, and I definitely feel it. I feel that coming through the government, because in Canada, if you go outside, we were talking about this before. If I walk down the street here, there's a mushroom dispensary not too far from me. So the answer is or the truth here is, anybody in Canada can access mushrooms, psilocybin. They can get it online. They can go down to the store and get it. But when it comes to medical treatment, it seems like the entire medical establishment and our government is conspiring to make sure that no one accesses it for medical purposes, which to me is just so backwards. That should be the priority. If anyone's going to do psilocybin, it should be with a doctor, right? But here we are, right? It's 2023, and just like back in 2010, when there were cannabis dispensaries all over the place, we got the same thing happening with psilocybin. So the fact that there's not more attention paid to this and that we're not looking into real solutions for these patients is absurd, but it certainly points back to some hidden agenda.
Yeah, that's really well said. And you had mentioned this analogy to like the Wild West. And the more that I listen to the words you just said, it does seem like on some level, like the local government's like, look how much money and tax revenue we can do from here. Look how many people we can help from here. And then you have this push from like the above federal level that's like, whoa, we have contracts with these guys, So it does seem like there's this kind of shootout at the OK Corral. What's your take on the whole Wild West? And if you were to dig a little deeper into this idea of you can go down the street and buy it, but if you're someone who's at the end of life, you can't even get a doctor to get it. Like, what? It just seems like such a crazy paradox there.
Yeah, but it does feel like the Wild West a bit, and I've got my reservations for the Liberal Party right now and how they're handling it. I mean, individually, I've met some of the most amazing MPs ever. Right? They're so incredible. So many of them. They've helped us. Jenna Catwin, Hetty Fry, Marcus Pulowski, Nathaniel Erskine-Smith. Like these politicians really, really care about this. But the unfortunate thing, as far as I can see, regarding psilocybin and many things in Canada, is the Prime Minister and the health ministers don't run the show anymore. Like the Prime Minister's office and the deputies behind them run it.
Right.
And I absolutely assume that they've got agendas, and that they are subject to, political bribery or whatever it is. Maybe that's a hard way to put it, but yeah, like who's setting the agenda? I don't know. You'd think it would be like the Constitution. You think that the health minister would be able to respond to a clear violation of patients' rights and just do it, but it looks like the health minister is completely ignoring this, and they've probably got direct orders: do not engage. Now, Minister Patty Hajdu, right? She engaged. She was wonderful. She also got moved from her position.
Imagine that.
I wonder, I'm not gonna, again, I can't speculate. Maybe that's why, maybe it's not, but the new ministers certainly didn't follow suit, right? And they were given direct orders there because they've completely ignored the issue. Like we've flown terminally ill cancer patients out to Ottawa, to the nation's capital, twice, like a group of 6 and doctors saying we need to meet, right? These people are quite literally going to die. They completely ignored us. Like that's unfathomable. It truly is unfathomable. And that's happening right now. So there is I say with a certain level of confidence, somebody within the Prime Minister's office is telling our ministers of health Jean-Yves Duclos and Karen Bennett, do not engage, right? Do not even respond to these people. Let it go to the courts or just ignore it. I think that's tragic, right? I think this is a complete abdication of responsibility, and when I zoom out even more, just very, very poor governance from our government, who should be looking to either enforce the law or change it. Instead, we've got this absolute mess, this wild west of like, just disorder, if you will. Companies selling mushrooms and LSD and DMT operating with impunity. Uh, you know, Practitioners having to work underground, patients moving underground, and our government just completely ignoring the fact that this is happening, that there's a charter challenge up against them, right? That they're being sued through the Supreme Court, and it looks like the easiest thing to do is just ignore the issue until it's literally on their doorstep. Hopefully, in a couple years, right? But not today.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's I don't know how some people sleep at night. I guess they sleep on a pillow made of money or something. But there's a quote that you said that I really admire, and it's that if the minister does not respond with compassion, then the courts will respond with justice. And I love that you and the people on your team at TheraPsil are fighters, and you guys are doing everything you can to bring the face of compassion to the doorstep of the regulators, to the doorstep of the government. Say, look at what's happening. And when you do that and the people turn away, it speaks volumes of who they truly are. Like, I there's almost no words to explain the shame that those people should feel. And recently there was a documentary with Lori Brooks called Dose. And I think that getting out there and showing the face of the people that are going through these end of life or going these tragedies and getting to participate, at least on some level, in that experience is like, there's no words to explain how moving that is. How did that come about to be? Can you talk about that a little bit?
The documentary, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dosed One, their original movie, followed a woman named Adrian looking to use, I think it was ibogaine or iboga, and there was some amazing success with using it. I think it was to get off of opioids or alcohol. So naturally, with the success of that original movie, it was like, well, what about psilocybin? And they obviously saw the amazing advocacy that Lori was doing, and there is an amazing, beautiful story behind every single dose of psilocybin. I think one that like most people aren't ready for, because what Dose 2, in my opinion, did is it took something that we keep talking about as just a medical treatment, right? Just a drug. And everybody who is opposed to psilocybin keeps referring to it as a drug. It's not a drug. Like it is, but it's not. That's it. It's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about taking a pill and expecting change. Like, it is quite literally a journey, right? It is a trip, and we call it a trip because, like, just like a trip, you got to prepare for it. It's going to be a while. It's, there's going to be unknowns. It's going to be scary. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be so many things. And Lori's story of Dose 2 really delves into that, to everything surrounding, the taking of this medicine. And quite frankly, the medical establishment, I mean, psychiatry is not ready for that. It's going to upend it. And I think that documentary is the first preview into, like, what the future of psychotherapy could be, or at least one avenue, right? And that is the entheogenic or the psychedelic avenue, where people use substances to help change their consciousness and help them perceive, themselves and all the hurts and their ego, the pain, in a completely new light. And that's what it really is. It's a tool for a much broader psychotherapeutic journey or trip. Dose 2 did a really good job of that. And I hope that we see more documentaries, because there just is this fundamental misunderstanding maybe of what's going on and how psilocybin's working, that I could say this is true for so many things. If everyone just understood it, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It'd be allowed.
Yeah, that's really well said, and I'm glad that this kind of information is coming to the foreground. There's another documentary called Peace of Mind that Nick Murray, who is, I think he's the CEO of Wake, and he has a place down in Jamaica where they took these, athletes from Canada, Riley Coate, the hockey enforcer, and a bunch of people that had traumatic brain injury and PTSD, and it was similar to the documentary Dose, but with like a different flavor, And I think that these ideas of psilocybin and psychedelics that are helping people not only with psychiatric disorders, but actual traumatic injuries. And you could argue that end of life is both of those things. And to see these medicines come out and change people's perspectives in a way that is measurable. And by measurable, I mean, you don't need a bar graph. You don't need a sort of, brain imaging machine. You can talk to their family, and their family's tears are proof that it works. Like these real tangible things that can happen. And it I'm positive, and I am very thankful to see things moving the way they are. And the pushback we're getting, I think, is going to be pushed away. I'm sure that there's a bigger fight coming, but it just seems like so many people are finding ways to reinvent or get to see themselves in a different perspective. And I do think when people take psilocybin, it's almost like you get a whole nother perspective of your life. It's almost like you get to get in contact with this version of yourself that's always been there, but you've never known. And when you do, it's like meeting yourself for the first time. I'm curious as to what are some of the I was talking with John a little bit ago, and he was telling me that there are some other events on the horizon for TheraPsil. Maybe you could talk about where you guys are at right now and some things that you have that are hopeful on the front lines coming up.
For sure. So one of the things is we went to Ottawa. We've got a little documentary coming out,
Nice.
a mini doc. It's like 15 minutes long, but I think it's beautiful, and it outlines the trips that we made to Ottawa um, because because we had to go there. I think I'd mentioned we went twice to go see the minister, and we thought there's no way in hell the Minister of Health is going to publicly, snub, right? Patients and doctors who are flying all the way out to Ottawa to essentially say, I'm going to die if you don't give me this medicine. And I've been working on the delivery of this because I think it gets lost on people sometimes. But, we often don't deal with things until it's too late, right? Let's just say that, things aren't an issue until like it affects you. Um, a road closure in Toronto here, I think of, the Don Valley Parkway is closed. Who cares, right? That's everyone's attitude until they need to take that road. And then it's like, shit, what the hell? And so, a lot of people in Canada are right now debating medical assistance in dying, our medical suicide laws that are due to expand. They were supposed to expand this year to allow people. So the provisions essentially say that medical assistance in dying is available for anyone with an intractable illness for whom death is foreseeable. So it's like you're dying soon. There's nothing we can do. You're in a lot of pain. It's the humane thing to do, right? To offer that person death. At least many people think so, and our Constitution or our Charter supports that. But then we had all these people arguing, well, what if death isn't foreseeable, right? What if I want to end my life because I'm not dying soon, but I still am in a lot of pain? And so we thought, well, let's do that too. And then it obviously expanded to what about people with severe mental illness, right? Like anxiety and depression. My whole day, I'm just depressed. I'm anxious. I don't want to live anymore. Why are you forcing me to take ending my life into my hands? Why won't you support me medically and help me do it painlessly? And so again, it was decided that we would make that change. And that was set to happen in February of 2023, so a couple months ago. And we were going to Ottawa the same month to more or less protest and say, what the hell, right? We're now at a point where we are telling people, because you've tried all the available treatments and failed them, we will now help you end your life. We'll prioritize that for you. But here's the kicker. The same government is withholding treatments that could be very, very effective. In fact, 80% effective in treating their underlying illness, their mental illness, depression, anxiety. That is, oh my, like, that makes me so angry, right? That's what's happening. That's the state of Canadian healthcare. We are prioritizing medical assisted death over medical psilocybin, right? We're prioritizing medical assistance in dying over medical assistance in living. Sorry, that's the way it is. That's the truth. We had gotten to Ottawa, and sure enough, many Canadians decided that they were uncomfortable, and they actually pushed the decision out a year. So while we were there, we actually got to meet with the MAID committee. Both myself and a doctor on our team gave testimonies, and the committee who runs medical assistance in dying actually said and made a recommendation to the federal government that they actually expand access to psilocybin because of this. Here we are, almost halfway through the year, still no progress has been made. I just know it. We're going to get to next February, right? And it's going to be like, well, do we expand this thing, right? Do we let people end their life? And I dread the day that a single Canadian, is helped with medical assistance in dying for treatment-resistant depression or anxiety before they're presented the option of psilocybin, because I've seen it work. I still struggle to find the words for it. And it really just comes down to, like, what if one of my friends or family members needs to use that road soon, right? How many Canadians are there out there who don't realize that could be them, that could be their loved ones, that could be someone that they know having to make this decision of, like, do I take my life right now, or is there a potential solution called psilocybin, right? Just one of many. There are obviously many other social determinants of health that are problematic there, right? A lot of people are looking to MAID or medical assistance in dying because they don't have housing, or are being pushed by not so great healthcare professionals who don't see any other options for treatment. So there are lots of issues, but certainly there's this logical and moral inconsistency. And the government seems to want to prioritize medical assistance in dying over medical access to psilocybin. That's unconscionable. It's reprehensible, quite frankly. And that is on Justin Trudeau, Jean-Yves Duclos, and Caroline Bennett. They're the only ones who can fix that.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine that the more stories that come. First off, I'm so thankful you're here telling the story today, because I think that the more people who begin to hear this story, the more people that see the documentaries, and the more people whose lives are touched by someone who's taken their own life, or someone that has depression, or someone themselves has gone through a depressive state. Like, it seems to me, as horrible and as unconscionable as it is, I think it's a great opportunity, because I think we're beginning to see policy made from the ground up. And, like, that's where the real change happens. It doesn't happen from the top down. It happens from the bottom up. And I think that yourself and TheraPsil are a great sort of story. Like, you guys are the hero's journey. You are the guys taking the fight to the doorstep of the threshold guardian. It's like, hey, this is not right. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight for this. And I don't care what great novel you read or what movie you've ever loved, like, this is something that everybody can get behind, because this is our chance as a human culture to get behind a good fight that stands up for the little guy, that stands up for the little girl, that stands up for the person with a problem. And I'm thankful. Is that what gives you the drive to continue on the fight? Like, what is the mission statement that you and the team and everyone fighting with you are rallying behind?
It certainly is, to continue this as a grassroots, solution to a crisis. I think you're right on the mark here. Like, let's just even say that innovation, on psychic innovation, this is just the beginning. Like, we're at, like, this little tiny, like, we don't even know what these things really do. Speaking medically and scientifically, Western medicine, like, doesn't really understand them. Innovation doesn't happen in the lab. It doesn't. It happens there in the real world, right? Once we get this into the hands of psychotherapists and people who start experimenting, like, and that's just a math equation, right? That's just a number of interactions and different diverse, procedures and protocols being used. We're just going to discover so much more once we give people the freedom to use and experiment this with psychedelics. So This idea that the government is going to help you, uh, again, is absurd, absolutely absurd. As first of all, as an individual, you're just you're a fish in the ocean.
Right.
Um, as far as I can tell, and again, I'm just speaking in my experience, right? I would love for people to prove me wrong, but I just don't expect it. I don't think that the government is there to hold your hand or to help you, nor do I think we should want that, right? Like we should want the freedom and to build the infrastructure to help ourselves. That is the point of becoming independent. Um, we should allow, our government should help us help ourselves and make our own decisions for us. We don't need them giving us handouts or anything like that. They should just create the conditions economically, the health conditions where we can really help ourselves. And it's not against government. I think government's wonderful. There are things they need to do, defense, public infrastructure, right? I think of, what really changed Europe and made it the way it was. Sewers, right? Like we got past this point of realizing that we need a government, a central authority to put in sewers, because one man's mess and cesspit is someone else's disease. And so the second we got sewers and plumbing, all of a sudden infectious disease went away. And what else did we see is we also saw a free society come out of that, a liberal one that was very, very able to take care of itself and to self-organize and manage. And so similarly here, we don't need the government to, we shouldn't have the government telling us who can access psilocybin, making it illegal on the basis of zero scientific evidence, right? Where's the evidence to show that psilocybin is harmful? There is none. We don't need them to do that. We need them to get out of the way and let doctors practice medicine, let people make their own decisions, because they just don't care about you. They don't care about Janice Hughes. They don't care about Thomas Hartle. They don't care about Laurie Brooks. In our experience, I can tell you that. They don't respond to their emails. They seem to be prioritizing medical assistance in dying over access to a mushroom. The best thing they could do is create regulations that put this into the hands of doctors and therapists so that they can help these people access medicine. And really, that's what we're trying to recreate here. The people and the infrastructure to bring psilocybin to patients exists, right? It's the doctors and therapists and nurses who just need a legal pathway so that they can learn, get the training. That's why we provide training. It's all right in front of us. The government needs to get out of the way. They really do.
What a strange world where a manager tells a doctor that the doctor shouldn't be doing something. That's so bizarre to me.
Yeah. I mean, in this special access program that I had mentioned, we had bureaucrats at Health Canada, unknown bureaucrats, not doctors, telling the doctor, I think your patient needs to try electroconvulsive therapy, right? Electric shock therapy before they access psilocybin. And the doctors said, are you kidding me? Right? It's like, you try electric shock therapy and then come back and tell me if that's a real option, right? Like preposterous, absolutely preposterous. And quite frankly, illegal. That's my claim. It goes against the charter, right? It goes against, so maybe not illegal, but against the Constitution, right? That's not right. So it's just, we have to prove that now. And really, that's why these places are operating with impunity right now. Selling mushrooms across Canada, is the government knows that they're going against the charter. They know that. Otherwise, they would enforce the law. They know they can't, because if they charge these places who are supplying medical psilocybin, they know that they will lose in court. Like, digest that for a second. The same government who's telling cancer patients and doctors, no, you can't access this. We go, well, should we just go buy it on the street? Because we can do that. Why aren't you enforcing the laws there? They go silent. They go, oh yeah, we can't talk about that. I know the answer, right? The answer is if they bring that to the courts will side with the people selling the mushrooms, right? They know they've got a losing case. They're not dumb. And that's been part of the very interesting, for me, it's been very interesting bringing this court case forward. Is it's much easier to get charged by the government and have a constitutional challenge when the government's pressing the charges like they did with cannabis. It's much more difficult when you have to bring the constitutional challenge to the government, which is what we're doing. We've got 8 patient plaintiffs that have their own court case, a constitutional challenge with Paul Lewin being the lead lawyer on that. We've probably fundraised about $150,000. We're going to need money in order to continue that. But yeah, that's just the way it is. You want to change the law. Government's not going to do it, right? You got to fundraise the money and bring the constitutional challenge to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. For those who may not know the statutes up there, can you explain to them why would the government lose to the people that own the storefront mushroom shops?
For sure. So what became incredibly clear, and any regardless of their legal knowledge base can understand that psilocybin and cannabis are similar, and even in some ways, access to medical assisted dying and abortion and cannabis are all very similar too. It all rests on the same case law, and you can go back and look at those cases, the Carter case, Parker case, a couple others skipping my mind right now. Look up Henry Morgenthaler, right? These are people who went to court and using so Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, is the person who brought forward our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I think it's ironic that Justin Trudeau is betraying his father's wish to have a constitution that's followed and is actively going against it. I think the irony there is disgusting. But this charter has this clause in it, Section 7, that says every Canadian has the right to life, liberty, and security of persons. And all of the cases that I've referenced keep coming back to this. And it's you have the right to liberty, right? Liberty to make your own medical decisions about yourself. You have the right to life. Goes without saying, right? Government says, we'll help you end your life. And you go, well, what about my right to life, right? All I need is psilocybin. That one's pretty easy to understand. And then security of persons just means that you should be able to access your medicine without the threat of going to jail. That's not security of persons, right? So all that to say, using that same Charter 7 argument, we've made the case that people have the right to choose to end their life with medical assistance in dying. For me, after that one, it's well, you have the right to anything almost, right? That's landmark. But it also applies to the right to make your own choices about your body with abortion in Canada, and the right to medical cannabis for the same reasons. So the consistencies there are so obvious. Canadians have the right to access medical treatments that they want, right? Especially when it's supported by their doctor, right? And anything to infringe them or to make it possibly unsafe or illegal or inaccessible goes against the charter. And so the government knows that if they try to charge these medical dispensaries, who every time you go into one, you just have to say, I'm using this for medical purposes, and you likely are. They know that if they try to bring those companies and people who are selling that to court, that those people will just get the lawyers that we're working with and say, how do I defend myself? And the lawyer will go, well, that's easy. Section 7 of the charter. And they go, oh, crap. Okay. So right now, I know the lawyers who are advising all of those people who are their clients, saying, you don't have to worry about the police there. You don't have to worry about any of that. You're not breaking any, you're breaking laws, sure, but those laws go against the charter, so you don't have to worry. We'll defend you. And so that's the pretext of those businesses and of the decisions to sell psilocybin is you're operating, you can operate with impunity because we know what the outcome of this court case would be. So in a way, it's good for them. They're selling mushrooms, and that's happening every single day. The government knows it as well. And I'm happy to be proven wrong on this. I mean, it seems the only way to prove me wrong would be well, then do it, right? Go get the government to charge you. And then there's a world, I think, where, we get 1,000 people just to bring a bag of mushrooms to Parliament Hill, and we demand to be arrested.
I love it.
Happen. It won't happen, So I think there's something cool in that. It might be that maybe there's a future campaign where we do something like that, get a real march going. Because yeah, like I said to you before, it's like shit or get off the pot, right? Like all we're doing is completely mismanaging the country, and that's coming from the highest levels of government. Um, it's a disgrace.
Yeah, sometimes I have this idea that psychedelics or psilocybin is like this Trojan horse that like all of a sudden like people get on board with, like governments or pharmaceutical companies they get on board with, whether they're trying to create a patent for it, and then they start using it and then they realize everything they're doing is wrong. It seems that psilocybin or psychedelics have this property of dissolving boundaries. And I see that happening not only when I take them or people that I know take them, but I see it happening in society itself, where, once you begin seeing things from a different perspective, you start realizing, like, God, look at this boundary. This is not if you think of a law as a boundary and the way that psychedelics are pushing up against those boundaries, they're dissolving those boundaries. People are beginning to see, like, this law is kind of BS, man, or this is ridiculous. And it seems that this maybe if we go with the premise of as above, so below, the same thing that's happening in the fight with psychedelics is also happening in our societies. Can you see like can you see that happening too? It seems like this is something that's bigger than just psychedelics and laws, but it seems that there's a whole kind of boundary dissolution happening in our societies. Do you see something on a bigger scale happening as well?
I mean, I totally do. That's not lost on me, right? There's an incredible amount of distrust going on in the world right now.
Right.
People believing that institutions are lying to them, um, and and that's unfortunate because that's not how society works. Society needs trust,
Yeah.
right? It needs institutional trust, and we need to be, operating in a way that people aren't going to fight everything and be against everything. And public health has suffered the greatest since COVID.
Yeah.
I won't speak about whether or not COVID vaccines work or not, or mandates work or masks. It doesn't matter. What I can do is say that whoever pulled off that whole thing did a terrible job, and it eroded a lot of public trust. And I'm not saying I could do better. I'm just saying that it was done incredibly poorly, and that people are more divisive and divided. We saw the truckers in Canada, protesting. Um, it was not a small issue. And so when our medical establishment acts in bad faith and gets caught, I have no remorse for them. It's like someone needs to be fired here, and we need better people doing this. And that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Something I've got to explain and put out there is we actually have 2 court cases going right now. At times we have 3. We're working with another lawyer named Nicholas Pope, who's been helping the hundreds of healthcare practitioners who had gotten exemptions to use psilocybin, or who had applied for the same exemptions that the first, 20 doctors had gotten. I had mentioned that we started off under Minister Haiju getting these Section 56, as they're called. The new ministers have been ignoring them. And so there's about like 300 outstanding exemptions that are just being ignored. And so this lawyer, Nicholas Pope, is going, well, we can force them to make a decision, and we can actually get a judge to make a ruling if the decision goes against the Constitution. So the decision wouldn't legalize psilocybin; it would just legalize it for those people.
Hmm.
So we're only a couple months away from we've had our hearing and everything. The decision is going to be made in the next couple of months. But this is the most amazing part: is the evidence that we got to see, because they had to share their documents with us, showed us 3 examples of the government acting in bad faith, like lying, and that is the first one. Is they made these claims that a clinical trial would be the best possible route for us, right? That the politicians should go the route of clinical trials. Well, we got access to all their documents, and we had their internal specialists, so Health Canada's own experts, saying clinical trials are impossible. You can't do it for this purpose. It just wouldn't work. You can't have a sponsor running it, and it's unethical to ask a question for which you already know the answer to, or for which there is no need. So they lied on that front. They also lied and said that that it's not necessary for healthcare practitioners to have access to psilocybin for training. Their own experts said we advise that you do this. It's unsafe, and it doesn't follow any of the best practices of psychotherapy, to not have healthcare professionals trained in the modality before they deliver it. Health Canada said there's no evidence or no suggesting that you actually even need this. And then finally they said there's no evidence saying that psilocybin is safe and effective. And it's like, it's the most blatant lie of them all. There is
Right.
so much evidence, and they ignored our question of where it shows that they didn't provide any. So this is the same thing as, like, this larger issue of, like, how does any government expect to be taken seriously if they lie to people? This is there are some days where I'm like, I honestly, not that we need revolution, but we need to fix this problem, right? We know how government should work. We do. We know how health authorities should work. They should not act in bad faith, especially not Health Canada, yet they are. That's a charge I'm making, right? That's the charge we're making in our court case, and we're going to find out the answer to that really, really soon. As far as I'm concerned, seeing all the evidence and with our lawyer, we're going to win that case. I know we are. We're going to be proven right, and that's going to be embarrassing for the government. It really will be. And so when you say that, as above, so below, right? Like, we're seeing that these institutions are not immune from scandal,
Right.
from poor management. That's what we're seeing right now. The government is poorly managing these drug laws. There, at least in the case of psilocybin, I've got a view of that, right? That not many people do, and it's unfortunate to see the way that it's panning out. It really is. I really hope that we can bring some reasonable psilocybin regulations forward that might be a good start, and prove that, next time we need to do this, we don't need to go to the courts. The government doesn't act so shady. They actually work with politicians, with doctors and patients, to bring forward regulations for new drugs that may be available through slightly different pathways, right? Maybe not through clinical trials or through the traditional clinical trial pathway where you actually approve a drug that comes from a pharmaceutical company.
Man, I'm proud, man. Thank you, Spencer. TheraPsil, thank you. I mean, I'm so stoked to see people that are, in a way, this is the emerging fight that's beginning to happen everywhere. In the US, we have places like Colorado and Oregon, and they have got their own battles they're fighting. But it seems to me that Canada is on the forefront up there, and they are shining a light on the pathway forward. And I'm so thankful that there's people that are out there fighting, that are strategizing, that are working together to bring solutions to people that need it the most, and pointing out the hypocrisies and fighting the good fight. Do you think, if you were to put on your hat for the future, like, this could have long-term ramifications for the medical industry forever? Like, there's ways that this could change clinical trials forever. There's ways that this could change the relationship between governments and people and medicine. Are there some ideas that you think worthy about thinking about for changing the process of the medical and relationships to drugs and people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we need a restructuring of, I think there is a need for restructuring the relationship of pharmaceutical companies and politicians and medical establishments. I'm just going to say it. There is a major conflict of interest that is not discussed.
Yeah.
And the pharmaceutical industrial complex has far too much power, far too much political power. And I don't like that at all. I think that the best thing we could do is take funding, from NIH or CIHR funding, right, our government funding, and be putting more money into organizations like such as our own that are trying to do real science and research on drugs like this without any need of making a profit for ourselves, right? That's why we're a nonprofit. Now, it's not an attack on capitalism. Capitalism's great. It's just you need really, really good policies for ensuring that there is a barrier between private companies and government. I do not see such barrier when it comes to many pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment. And in the government. It's something that I would love to personally get more into. I would love to expand my career to take on that a bit more. I think that would be amazing. And then maybe just to wind it back to, another solution I see, goes back to one of your original questions of like, we were talking about this hero's journey, right? Like what can be done. We can't expect anybody else but ourselves to solve this problem. And I always go back to like, what do psychedelics tell you? What is one of the greatest things is like, it gives you the absolute power to, or what's the right word? It makes it very clear that you are the one with agency to change the world, right? At least your world and the world of people around you. So I think that that's something that psychedelics, I hope, will bring to the world, is this return to conscientiousness, that we really are, capable of massive change in this world, and that our votes matter, our voices matter, everything that we do matters, and if we don't look at the world through that lens, our society could very well collapse, right? We cannot take that for granted. The fact that the lights are on every day, the fact that we don't have an authoritarian government, at least not yet, and the fact that we have these freedoms, that we have a charter, like there needs to be a certain amount of gratitude for that, and letting things like what's going on with these patients who are trying to access psilocybin, letting these go unnoticed and not treating them with a great deal of seriousness is a perfect example of how, if left unchecked, that could just cascade into more and more civil rights issues where we don't even uphold the laws that we've created to protect people. So that's where I see this going. And I see it as every individual's responsibility in the Western, well, not even just the Western, in the world, to uphold the values of their society, of the U.S. Constitution, right, of the Canadian Charter. That's the world I know very, very well, and it's the one that I want to see continue to succeed. And if we're going to do that, people need to take on a lot more personal responsibility, and need to realize that they are agents of change. They have agency to do that. I hope psychedelics will wake that up in people. Something needs to.
That's beautiful. I agree. I think that the way we move forward is by everybody becoming the best version of themselves. And the first step there is just having the courage to know that you can be better. And then the next step is like, okay, I'm going to read this book today. I'm going to go for a walk today. Whatever that first step is, beginning to have the faith and courage in yourself to become the best you can leads you to the destination of like, we need to take care of the least among us over here, because the people in charge right now on some level are the least among us, and this idea of when we look at, it saddens me to think, at least in my government, where I look and see people talk about, corporations and government, but it's in socialism and capitalism. And it seems that what we have is like this form of corporate socialism where you just privatize all the profits and you socialize all the losses. And it seems to me like that's one thing that's, that's what psychedelics is bringing to the forefront. Like, look, this is just complete privatization. And we're seeing people in hospitals that hey, you can have assisted suicide because that way you're no longer a burden on us. But you can't have this medicine that might make you better, because then we're going to have to pay for you longer. And it saddens me to think, but I think when you wipe away the dirt from the screen, or when you cleanse the doors of perception, that's exactly what's going on. It's that the people at the top have seen everybody down here at the bottom as like this number. Okay, fine. You're depressed, then just kill yourself. Don't take this thing that'll make you better, because then you might have some animosity towards us. I don't want to go too diabolical on everybody, but that's kind of the way I see it too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to change. And yeah, I think sometimes, I think that one of the reasons that I've gotten so much more into, let's say, like religion and divinity,
Right.
not that I'm like a Bible thumper or anything, but it really has become more interesting to me is that, in what I've read, that's a lot of what at least Christianity had to offer people was this idea that, that you have agency and that it's a virtue to take part in society and to do your best, like you said, to take care of the least among you. Right? That was what Christianity professed to do, was to be the religion for the poor, for the weak, and to actually take care. And I'm not saying that it has to be through Christianity or through Buddhism or through Islam. I'm just saying that these are moral foundations that we all share, whether or not we read a book, right? Whether or not we profess to be part of some, some religion or some creed. So I think there's a need for a little bit of a return to that, of a moral philosophy that allows us to all be like, hey, we've actually got a goal here. It is to help. It is to help people who are suffering right now. And if we aren't taking care of that, doesn't matter how much money we have. How could we possibly live in a world where we see people suffering the way they are? Right. That should be one of the most important things that we do is take care of people who are in abject misery, pain, and suffering. Really is the goal at the end of the day of TheraPsil and what we're doing, right? People, as you say, have the right to die. They're suffering. Let's work together and help them. Let's put profits aside for a second.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up this idea of spirituality, because that's something that seems to permeate the psychedelic experience. And regardless of what denomination anybody is, I think that this return to spirituality is in fact the moral foundation we need to move forward. And it does seem to me that it's a spiritual event to see someone who was addicted to something take this substance that comes from the ground, not only get better, but then become an advocate to help other people that are going through that journey. And I see that a lot. Like, I see the person that was on the edge or the precipice of the cliff ready to jump, and they get this spark in them, whether it's ibogaine or psilocybin or some sort of entheogen, and all of a sudden they're given the knowledge of how to fix themselves. But they don't just use it for themselves. They take that knowledge and then they open a center, and then they become this guiding light for other people. And that's the spiritual nature that I'm seeing. So, like you said, it doesn't have to be Christianity or Buddhism, but to see that take place, yeah, it's beautiful, man. And I think that is gonna be, it's like the hyphae that grows together and when you're growing psilocybin, you can see our community growing together in a way that is spiritual in nature. I'm wondering, maybe you could talk a little bit more about spirituality and the nature of it in this psychedelic space.
Absolutely. I mean, I would just say that I don't think it's any coincidence that many of the people that we've treated, no matter how much of an atheist they are, end up having psychedelic experiences with Jesus.
Mhm.
It's like, what gives, right? Or God, let's just say.
Right.
And I think that's the word I want to start using, because I don't think psychedelics or that I don't want to push anyone, religious creed. I think it's just like God. I think that God, and here's my belief, not in no way am I pushing it on anyone, but I think every human being has a God-shaped, either hole or piece in their heart, and that those without God have a God-shaped hole, and they need something to fill it.
Mhm.
And I see people become, radical extremists of this belief or that belief, always an ism
Yeah.
or something like that, right? They take on this seemingly religious kind of zealousy of pushing their cause forward, and it comes back to, like, I think that's what happens when you have this lack of spirituality, this God-shaped hole in your heart. What is purpose? And I do believe that in this statement that if there is no God, there is no purpose.
Mm.
I think that is a human fundamental, to have a God. I'm not saying which one. I'm just saying to believe
Yeah.
that there is something greater in this life than waking up and making money and eating and having sex. It's like there is something better. And so again, I think it's no coincidence that AA, right, is so heavily like God based, right? Is like believing in God and that there is a God and that there is like someone out there, who's above you and might be able to help you. Uh, I think that that's necessary to have purpose in life and to believe in that because it's a motivation. I'm not saying everyone needs it. I know lots of people who don't believe in God and they're doing great. Um, but for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, like thousands of years, there have been, there's been a belief in God, in a God or some spirits, and it's really served people. I don't think we're as smart as we think we are, where we just think we can do away with that and we'll be fine. I call BS. I think that this spirituality, that these age-old golden philosophies, right? Thou shalt not kill, and there are many, many, many
Yeah.
others, right? You can look at the 10 Commandments for a starter, and I'm sure there's lots in other religions, right? These foundational beliefs, the golden rule, right? These things are like thousands of years old, right? Just to throw them aside and be like, yeah, it's a bunch of pagan bullshit, that's ridiculous. And we've got to seriously reconsider that. How we do that, it'll have to be done with grace, right? I would never want anyone pushing their religious beliefs on anyone else, but I can certainly see a nice diverse world where we all believe in different things and we honor that. And perhaps psychedelics will integrate its way into all of those, into those different religions or spiritual beliefs. So I see God as purpose. At least it's played a huge role in my life.
Yeah, I love the way you explain that. For me, sometimes when I think of God, I think of Christopher Hitchens. Not that Christopher Hitchens is a god, but Christopher Hitchens wrote the book that God isn't great, and he argued so elegantly for like this not having a God. But I can't help but disagree with the point of like believing in something bigger than yourself, regardless of what it is, can tie you to someone in a different part of the world who also believes in something bigger than themselves. And even though those things may be different, the idea that you both believe in something bigger than yourself is something that should unite you. And it shouldn't matter and that's the foundation, I think, for this idea of spirituality. And I think that that's something that brings spirituality to the forefront. And there's if you look at biblical quotes, there's this great quote that says, without a vision, the people perish. And it doesn't matter what your vision is, but you got to have this vision of something bigger, because that's where faith comes from. And maybe that's why we are seeing the people at the end of their life on the front lines of this fight, because they're closest to this transcendental object at the end of time. And they're somehow in communion with it. And they're bringing this thing back. The same way when you and I find ourselves on a high dose psychedelic trip trying to bring something back, so too is someone at the end of their life trying to bring something back. And it's this idea of sharing that thing. And I think that that's what TheraPsil is doing, Spencer. I think that you guys are bringing something back from this space and you're using it to fight the good fight, man. I'm so excited for you guys.
Thank you. And I agree with everything you just said, right? Like those without faith or purpose perish. I think that's totally it, right? I think we live in a society that is void of any hope, right? Of any meaning. I think that's sad, right? It's like, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in this collectivism, right, that there is this purpose, why not just be a nihilistic asshole, right? why not just do everything for yourself and be, Scrooge McDuck, right? Getting everything for yourself and for no one else. I think that, I think that that's maybe what's happening a little too much. It's permeating itself in the fabrics of our society these days, and to just without God or any religious philosophy claim that no, I'm a good person, I believe in these things because I discovered them. It's like, no, you didn't. It took humanity thousands and thousands of years to discover those things and get them right. Right. You stand on the shoulders of giants, of your ancestors who died and fought for those values and suffered when they were lost and benefited when they were followed. I really hope we have a return to that. And again, psychedelics are a return to that. Maybe not, if not done the right way, if not respected greatly. And that is something. I mean, if you don't use them right, They just
Sure.
don't work, right? If you don't use them right, you can be abused by your therapist. If you don't use them right, it can send you into a terrible psychosis, and so they're dangerous too. Um, but if used right, they can be beautiful. They can return you to consciousness and make your life better and teach you amazing, beautiful things. I hope that's what will come of them.
Yeah, I do. And I'm reminded of when I think about psychedelics, I'm reminded of some things that I recently saw this thing with Ram Dass, and he was talking about how people take themselves really seriously, and it seems that psychedelics, on some level, are evoking the gods of humor, whether it's Coyote or Heyoka, or they have like their own sense of humor to them, and it allows you to kind of laugh at the person that is like just accumulating everything and they're like all bummed out. Like I feel bad for that person, but at the same time, it's kind of funny. And it kind of gives people the courage to fight against that corruption. When you see people in government that are like, I got this government contract, maybe the answer to all this corruption is humor. And it may be a dark humor. It may be like, how can you look at these people and not, do you have any idea how ridiculous it is that you guys see all this in front of you and you have the answers and you refuse to do it? But on some level, I think that there's that, I hate to say a dark side of spirituality, but like there's this dark humor that forces people to laugh in the face of tragedy. And I think that that's another aspect of spirituality that psychedelics is bringing. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, I love the example. Like me and my friends at the gym, always used to, whenever you're on the bench press or squatting, you try to make the other person laugh. And the reason is because if you're laughing, your muscles stop working. They stop. And I think that's something that like I hope we study more. Like, why is it that when we laugh, all of our organs, or not our organs, but our extremity, like our limbs give out? Uh, I think it's for beautiful reasons, right? I think it's because it's like it's the thing that has evolved. I think it's no like mystery, right? It's like that was an evolved thing to help us digest concepts that otherwise maybe were very difficult. And so the fool in the king's court,
Yeah.
right, wasn't just the person who told the truth to the king, right? He did it in a way that was funny so that the king could laugh at himself. And in a way, he was the only one that was allowed to tell the truth, right? Because sometimes, and that's what like all my favorite comedy is, right? Is it's the truth. And you laugh before you even really think about it, right? People who like, maybe totally like their agenda is completely opposite to what you're saying. We've all seen it. Once
Right.
once they laugh, you're like, oh, I got you. And it's because it's like you just did, right? You got them. And I think of myself, right? Like whenever I was young, that was my tactic on my parents. If they were ever really upset, I'd make them laugh. And the second they start laughing, I'm like, I'm good,
Yep.
like, yeah, because it disarms them. And we all see that, I think everyone's experienced that at some point in their life. So I love that you said that laughter, right? The humor. Humor is the greatest way to disarm terrible things, right? If you
Yeah.
bring humor to someone and someone stops taking them seriously, and the truth is that like everybody needs to do that in a way, right? We're all too committed to the wrong things. It's like just relax, take it easy. Uh, stop taking yourself so seriously. You're probably wrong, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's super true. It is like the great equalizer. And I think that
Yeah.
that's, again, that's the hero's journey too, is getting to this point where you're on. I think it was Alan Watts who said, once you achieve Satori, all that's left to do is have a good laugh.
Yeah,
Right. Like, it's so
exactly.
funny. Spencer,
Exactly.
I love talking to you, man, and I'm so thankful that I got to spend some time with you today. I'm going to be doing some panels in the future, so you're going to be on my short list. I'd love to have you come back and have a fuller discussion with more people where we could bounce more ideas off each other. But
I would love that.
yeah, man, me too. And maybe we can start doing some practical jokes in the community or something. But that
That
would be a
would be
great thing
amazing.
to do, right?
If there are any funny people out there who want to help us lobby the Canadian government and are good writers or anything, yeah, hook me up
Yeah.
because I think we could definitely use some humor in our campaigns.
I know the perfect people. I know the perfect people. Okay, I'll hook you guys up. I know these guys that have like a meme page. They're all about omnism, and they have this meme page. It has like 80,000 followers, and they just have constant memes, and they're all super funny. So I'll put you guys in contact, and we'll move it forward. But before I let you go, I know that there was a call to action you put out. I'm going to post it on my page so people can make the videos. But maybe you could talk about the call to action, what you got coming up, and where people can find you if they want to get more acquainted with your campaign and what they can do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I was saying before, if people started to realize how this would affect them, right, and how one day they might need this road, I would hope that I can communicate to them that that the opportunity to act is right now. Right, we've got the opportunity to put these videos together, and we kind of passed over this in the show or in the podcast. I really should mention that.
Let's talk. Let's. I got plenty of time. If you please, let's cover it.
Wonderful. So the way that we got the Minister Haiju or Patty Haiju to respond, we had a team of about 6 people. No one knew who TheraPsil was. And we had that small kind of team, Bruce and a couple clinicians and 2 patients. And we were just putting out videos, and over the course of 100 days, we put out a video every day. And the video would be like this: "Dear Minister, my name is, I'm either a doctor, a therapist, or a patient. If I'm a patient, it's like, you have given me the right to die with medical assistance in dying, yet here I am waiting for, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, 100 days. And for the doctors, like, my patient's been waiting 100 days, right?" And it was a count up. It was just little videos. These videos worked, right? Like, people saw these videos. The minister saw the videos. And I don't even think it's been many years of video content, and videos are so powerful. So we're restarting that campaign. It worked when we only had like 6 people. Now we've got like thousands of people. And again, the great irony is, now that I guess there's thousands of people, it's never been harder to get even one of them to put together a video. And I understand why. It's like, that's like this. It's this fallacy, right? The more people dedicated to a cause, the more you just seem to think, oh, someone else will do it. And it's like, that's where we're at right now. Is I couldn't tell you how hard it is to get one person to show some public support for psilocybin or these patients, and to make a video. So yeah, we've got this call to action video campaign. I don't want 1 or 2 people. I need like 3,000 people making videos. And if we could just get that, if we could get people calling out Justin Trudeau, Jean-Yves Duclos, Caroline Bennett, just telling their story of why we need psilocybin in like a 10 to 20 second or 30-second video. Once we start publishing those online, politicians can't ignore that, right? They can't ignore those kinds of things. When they're getting called out in video and it's all over social media, it's like, oh crap, we got to respond. We can't just respond in a letter, right? We got to respond publicly too. So keeping conversations public the way we are demands public response, and that's what we want, public response. So that call to action, it should be on our website. If you're not a TheraPsil member too, I should mention, like, everything we do is funded through donations, and it's just people becoming a member of the organization. So they can sign up online. I think we send this out to our members, but we might expand it soon. So yeah, if any of your listeners want to support, the way to do that is to become a member and to take part in this advocacy. I think that I realize you probably got a lot of American viewers, but kind of hint, hint, nudge, nudge. We're working on a U.S. expansion of our overall program too. So we're hoping very soon we can expand our training, maybe even clinical access down to the U.S.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why someone who has had a incredible experience with psilocybin couldn't make a video and explain it too. I mean, I think that we're all in this together, and the more the merrier. And I love that idea. Like, this might be, well, I've heard about it before, the idea of starting a campaign where someone could take 30 seconds out of their day to make someone's last moments beautiful, or to really have an impact. Like, 30 seconds of your day is nothing. Just take 30 seconds, make a video, and then you could see it play out and understand how powerful you are as an individual. Maybe we could just stay on there for just a little bit longer. Like, how did that campaign come about? And maybe you could talk about the feeling you got when you started to see it work.
For sure. So this was at a time when companies were fundraising $60 million, to bring psilocybin drug products, to get people treatment. Right now, that's a lot of money. I started off working for free, and we didn't have $60 million in top doctors and scientists and researchers. We had me, Holly Bennett, Yasmin Zadine, John, Natasha. We had like a couple people on our team who were working pretty much for free, and Thomas Hartle and Laurie Brooks and a couple doctors and therapists. And we're like, oh man, like what are we gonna do? And you're absolutely right. It was this almost pathological belief that we would do it, this faith,
Love
right?
it.
Of we will do this. And for 100 days, we endured every single day, people telling us, oh, this will never work. And let me tell you, that feeling when we realized that no, actually, six kids, right? And like a bunch of doctors and patients actually just did what an entire, multi-billion-dollar industry couldn't do. I think that that was amazing. We moved mountains with a very small team. And I can actually just say that the bigger we've gotten and the more attention, the harder it's actually become. So I think there's this beautiful thing where, once people start taking that attitude, if they actually can change things, they can make a difference. I think the short term kind of like gains that you'll see right off the bat, kind of like when you're learning a new sport, like skateboarding or something, where you actually get really good really quick, and then it's the more you do it, the harder it actually gets. That's the same is true for just, I think, believing in yourself, honestly. Why do people love Ted Lasso, right? Like it's because that message is like lost. Just believe, do it. That's what we saw. So you're absolutely right. It's like anyone who doesn't think that a 30-second video can't change the world, prove me wrong. Do it.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
Right. And it's fun and it's contagious and it's something that you can do for, I don't know. I think some of the most rewarding things that I've done in my life are times when I felt maybe I was feeling bad or something bad happened to me, and then I did something nice for somebody else, and all of a sudden everything that I felt like that I was down about just changed in me. And it's like, dude, I just made that person smile. And like they come up and they give you a hug. You're like, yeah, I needed that. And all of a sudden, this pain that I had is gone. It's like you get rid of the pain and the sorrow by being the change you want to see happen in the world. Like, thanks, Gandhi. Like that's all it takes, right?
Exactly. No, you're 100% right. Yeah.
So yeah, you guys heard it here. Let's start like a meme campaign, or let's start a video campaign. Go on my page, go on Spencer's page, check out TheraPsil, and make a video, make a good one, and make it heartfelt, make it funny, make it something that will help create change and be the change you want to be out there. But so just again to clarify, Spencer, where can people find you, and what's the best way to support you, and what are you most excited about coming up?
So yeah, people can find us at TheraPsil.ca. That's I realize our name's kind of confusing. TheraPsil. The P is for psilocybin, so it's like therapy psilocybin. Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn, we're on there. Again, like we run completely off of donations, so we need people to donate for us, so that I can keep working and our team can keep working. But the things that are coming up that are most exciting is like a possible clinical trial. We would need a whole nother hour to even talk about that, but hey, if you ever want to chat again, let's totally do that.
Yeah, let's set it up. I would love to.
Yeah, and then the other thing would be this video campaign. Addressing those videos to Justin Trudeau, Jean-Yves Duclos, and Caroline Bennett. Right, 30 seconds, being like, it's unbelievably ridiculous that in Canada you have the right to die, but not try psilocybin. Change drug laws. Do the right thing. Right there is all we need. Those, like that small sentence, that's it. You get enough people doing that, and you've gone viral, right? And now all of a sudden, everyone's calling them out and they have to respond. So I think that's the most exciting thing for me at this moment is just seeing if we can recreate what the beautiful thing that happened in 2020 when the Minister of Health responded and actually made change. It's time. It's time for something to happen again. We got to move the needle.
Yeah, I agree. And I admire what you and the team are doing up there. I think you're creating change, and it's inspiring. and it's something that everybody who's in this space can look towards. And whenever I see the comments and people talking about what you guys are doing, they're always so positive, and I think you guys are really paving the way for other people to follow. So I appreciate that, and I hope you keep up the good fight. And if I can ever do anything to help anybody on the team, please let me know. We're going to schedule let's schedule another one soon, and we'll get you on talking about the clinical trials, and we'll go deep dive on that. So that'll be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Make the video, check out the site, reach out to Spencer, and that's all we got for today. Aloha.